the topic, when Art asked me to speak, I had to come up with a topic. I'm kind of studying learning and skill development, so that's kind of where it came from. But the first part of it came, I was watching, last summer I think, I was watching a strength and conditioning coach work out Division I women's program. And what I saw, which pictures kind of the same thing, different athletes, but they were doing shuttle runs. And they were doing shuttle runs very, very poorly. And the strength and conditioning coach did not make any instruction in terms of how to change directions quicker. What position do you want your body to be in as you change directions? How do you want to decelerate? How do you want to accelerate? There was no instruction. It was just run 20 meters, run back. I'm just going to time it. All right, you have to go faster, 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 which in a lot of ways is the way that, like Ray was talking, that's kind of what coaches look for. I know that's what the basketball coach at this particular school looks for. She just wants harder, harder, harder. Doesn't matter if they're doing it correctly. So that was my first frustration is, watching him and watching them and having watched the team over a period of 3 or 4 years and the players not improving and there being no kind of instruction in terms of the quality of the movement involved in the exercises of the drills. The second one was in last October, there was an article published by a couple researchers at UC Davis, and they did an intervention to kind of look at the force on the knees on a jump landing. And the way it was reported in the popular media kind of, in my opinion, kind of bastardized the study. I'm going to talk about the study a little bit later, but that kind of got me thinking about these two things and going down this track towards more towards jump landings. And then finally, there was an article in the New York Times recently, or this spring, that talked about, it started off talking about Carolyn Doty from UConn and kind of talked about different players who've been injured and kind of the plague of women's basketball being ACL injuries. So that's kind of how everything came together for this talk. Now, what is the role of a strength and conditioning coach? The kind of older model is the bigger, stronger, faster kind of football model. I know I've heard from a couple of basketball coaches, college coaches this spring, and they're like, we need to find a way to get better strength and conditioning programs because we have football guys, and they just, they train our girls like they're football players. So that's kind of, one model. Vern Gambetta kind of argues for the redefinition of a strength coach in terms of more of an athletic development coach, which is kind of the way that I look at things. And it's not just building strength, although he is heavy in favor of strength being the answer to a lot of problems. But it's building the whole athlete, all the athletic qualities that go into excelling at your sport. And the end goal being that, being able to excel in the sport and not just being able to put up more weight in the weight room. And then finally, Radcliffe, looking at strength training is not just adding muscle, but building coordination through resistance. So to start out with, the premise of the talk is based on the fact that basketball coaches are not movement experts. Most basketball coaches, especially at the college level, are experts in other things, X's and O's, recruiting, relationships, motivation, etc. But movement skills, general athleticism, generally is not one of the things that basketball coaches are knowledgeable about or really care about. So I picked up these slides, and there were several others. So there are enough slides in this that I could get an idea of what these guys were doing, which would be a lateral movement drill. Basketball coaches would see this as a defensive slide drill. And that's one of the things that I try to separate is basic lateral movement from a defensive slide or the skill of defense. And as you can see, adding the cone in and having to reach for the cone at the end point has changed their body position from where you would want it to be. Nobody is going to play defense in a position like this and have much success. So again, it comes back to basketball coaches are looking at hard, faster, hard, faster, 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 hard, and not looking at the quality of the movement. So they may be getting a workout, they may be tired, they may even be getting some, lateral movement coordination out of it. But at the end of the day, they're not doing something that is going to then transfer to the movement that they need to use in a game situation or even in a practice situation. What they're doing is something extraneous that may be hard, may get them in better shape, may have some transfer, but at some point they're going to have to learn how to reposition their bodies into a proper position to play defense, to decelerate properly in a game situation. And even more than that, because this appears to be more of a static cone-to-cone type drill, they're going to have to learn how to react to offensive players, the ball, other defenders in a game situation. So agility is not just going to be a static cone-to-cone movement, but eventually it's going to be a reactive movement. So when we're looking at this, I put this up because with basketball coaches not being experts in movement, there is a void there for the strength and conditioning coaches to kind of slip into and to take on, again, depending on your role and your relationship with the head coach, to take on a little bit more of the skill and technique teaching and instruction in addition to the typical strength development, power development, aerobic development. So the first thing is I'm going to talk about learning because when I talk about learning, people have misconceptions of what learning exactly is. All right, so learning requires practice, and it's going to change behavior. Are the two essentials. So we want to create permanent change of behavior. So if we look, performance is a one-time event. So if I show improvement today, but I don't show the same kind of improvement tomorrow and the next day and beyond that, all right, it's performance. Performance is temporary. Learning is something that is permanent. So these are the 5 ways that we can assess learning. Learning occurs in the brain, so you can't visibly see learning. All right, so the ways that you can measure learning are by measuring performance and looking at these 5 variables. All right, so the 2 that I want to pay the most attention to would be persistence and adaptability. All right, it's especially when you're working the weight room, it's easy to see improvement, whether somebody can lift more weight from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. Generally, you can see the consistency in the movement, the stability, but the persistence and the adaptability are the 2 that most people tend to ignore or forget about. So the persistence being, if I do something today, I don't practice tomorrow, can I come back and replicate the same movement again? And adaptability being, can I take something, for instance, the slide drill from cone to cone, can I take that and does it transfer to a different situation? So if we're looking at that as a lateral movement drill or a defensive drill, but then when I go onto the court and my defense hasn't improved, that skill hasn't, I haven't learned that skill, the ultimate skill of playing better defense, because it hasn't adapted to the new context.